Folks, the news headlines surrounding housing this week are so crazy that it almost seems made up. Last month alone, we had September sell-off was as poor as it's been since the Great Depression. We've got buyers weeks and weeks in a row engaging the market in record low numbers. Right now, buyers going to get loans is at almost 30-year lows. Buyer engagement now lower even than the most recent Great Recession we had in 2008. Now at the same time, we've got foreclosures ticking up both in the residential world and in the commercial world at large. Everyone thinks that Newton's third law, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, that printing boatloads of money and dispersing it to the masses to light a fire to home prices overnight is not going to have a reckoning. And folks, I got to tell you, it is not different than last time. It is just different in how it will manifest itself in a recession that will beat all others. Now, folks, listen, I'm going to go specifically into the market news briefly, but I'm also going to dive in and show you exactly where, from an insider discussion that I had this week here in Florida, where is the danger? Where are the three most markets most likely to see a major issue with mortgage defaults? I'm going to point out three specific counties. I'm going to show you the data of how I got there. If you're big on knowing what's going on in the housing and the real estate market, smash the subscribe button and follow us on the journey. Let's get started. U.S. home sales fell in September to the lowest level since the Great Recession. Lawrence Yun, the chief economist here in the subheadline, says, "The Federal Reserve simply cannot keep raising interest rates." He shakes his fist, I'm sure, as he says that. All this indignance from our great association of realtors and also from the Mortgage Bankers Association. The CEO there this week said, I'm pissed at Washington. They're killing us all. And all these trade organizations are acting like all we got to do is lower interest rates some more. Inflate housing even further is great, according to these guys, for the little guy, right? They're always fist pounding saying the fact that the interest rates are really high, which are raised because the little guy can't afford mortgages, can't afford the price to purchase a home in the first place, can't afford to buy groceries. So they raised the rates to deflate the entire marketplace, and now we're mad about it? Were they equally pissed when easy money was creating a massive bubble and housing in some of these areas went up 80, 90%? Were they pounding their fists at the federal government saying, you're inflating the market too fast. It's going to create a bubble that's going to be painful to get over? Or are they just talking now, right? Obviously, we know the answer to that. Look at this. The total number of home sales in September fell by 8.1% last year. Housing inventory for the month of September was the lowest since 1999 when NAR began tracking the data. Also, compared to September 22, actual sales are down by 15.4%. It's icy cold, folks. The writer here says, big picture, the US housing market is in the midst of a serious slowdown, I'd say, that is primarily driven by the high mortgage rates. High mortgage rates spook the home buyers, drying up demand. High rates deter homeowners from selling since they have to purchase another home at 9% interest. And again, these homeowners are all locked in at 3%, blah, blah, blah. But folks, what happens if they have to sell? That's the big problem. This is what nobody's talking about. Take a look at this. This is according to law.com, who's citing bankruptcydata.com. Real estate companies are the leading sector filing for bankruptcy. Folks in the real estate industry are experiencing pain. We're now seeing all the reports that sales are slowing down. Obviously, the reason why, interest rates are now 8 to 10% for most people, depending on where their credit profile is. And now all of a sudden, everybody's bailing out of the industry. People are not making a living. There's like 700,000 active listings for sale in the United States, and there's 1.5 million realtors trying to sell that small pie of homes. It's just untenable. I heard from an industry expert this morning that he predicts there's going to be close to 50% of all lenders, loan officers, out of the business by the end of this year, by the turn of 2024. And here's the thing, the most recent number we have earlier this year, we have Fannie Mae's reporting earlier this year that 12% of the mortgage officers have already left the industry. And now you have the mortgage data coming out week after week. This week alone, mortgage applications decreased 6.9%. It was decreased from the week before that, and it's been downtrending. The amount of buyers getting in the marketplace for a purchase mortgage. Take a look at this. Within the article, this is just a day or two ago, applications decreased to their lowest level since 1995 as a 30-year mortgage increased for the sixth consecutive week to 7.7%. Folks, it went over 8% yesterday. the highest level since November of the year 2000. Both purchase and refinance applications decline, blah, 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 it goes on and on. Folks, hear me on this. Everybody and their brother, particularly those that are actually tied to the real estate industry, are going around pounding their fists saying, A, this is not like 2008. B, the Fed needs to stop raising interest rates. It's killing us all. That's not the answer. The reality is that the reason the market is stale is because there is no back and forth transition of houses between buyers and sellers anymore. So it's completely drying up. But here's the reality. Everybody that claims that this is an ideal situation, okay, meaning like houses are record high unaffordable, and the answer to that is lowering the interest rates. Because there's only two factors in making housing affordable again. One of two. You have to lower the price of the house, or you have to lower the interest rate on the property or the money you're borrowing, because 70% of the marketplace needs to borrow the money. So here's the thing. Everybody's looking at the market and they're saying, this market ain't crashing. It's not going to affect price. So all these people, and again, these trade organizations, they're all money made from the industry, okay? They need high membership, NAR, National Association of Realtors, MBA, Mortgage Bankers Association. They need people in the industry to pay their salary. These people can't exist if everybody has to leave the industry. And ultimately, if there is going to be a pullback on price, tons of people are going to be filing bankruptcy in the real estate industry. They're going to switch industries. They're going to go get jobs. And by the way, they're going to go get jobs as unemployment is going up. So now there's all these people cycling through these industries, many of them fleeing the actual housing industry, and everybody's going to be in the pain. Everybody. I got, handymen and people like that, those trades that are already in the marketplace are marketing after us like crazy right now. Like, hey, I need something to do. I need something to do. For everybody to think, well, if no one buys a house, maybe they'll remodel the house. No, nobody has any money. Like their savings are at record lows. They've borrowed everything they can. Now enter the next part of this conversation, which is in 2008, the reason why the prices of homes plummeted is you had a motivated seller and no buyer, okay? You had a lot more inventory, so you had way more. All it takes for prices to fall is an inequity on the side of a highly motivated seller, but no taker for the property, okay? That house will eventually sell, but all the buyers are gonna let the seller bid lower against themselves, right? They're gonna say, all right, I'm the buyer and I know I'm the only one out here because everybody else is not applying for anything. And if you're the only buyer in the marketplace, which is historic, this is essentially what is going on right now, folks. All the buyers have hit the bricks. They're gone, okay? So we have record low applications since 1995. Less buyers engaged in the market than even the Great Recession. At any point, we're talking way, way long time ago, has it been this low? And you got a difference in population size. Like the population today, I don't even know what it is. It's got to be way higher than 30 years ago. So here's the reality, folks. All of the folks that think there's not an issue with hyper risky loans, so the market can't fold. No. All you need for the market to fold is motivated sellers with no buyers to buy the homes. You have people all over the country right now in pain. We're watching savings rates drop. We're watching the amount of consumer debt at record highs, plus $1 trillion. I talked to a friend this week in the state of Florida who is a valuation expert for a bank through a national company that funds home equity lines, mortgages, the whole bit. I said, what are you seeing? He said, we are seeing a spike in home equity lines of credit. We're seeing a real spike in people trying to fraud home equity lines of credit. They're trying to borrow money on a property that's tenant occupied and trying to make us think it's not. I said, oh, that is interesting. Because here's the thing. When you look at the hierarchy of risk, okay, there's going to be a chain of events in this country that are in front of us right now. Bank of America's CEO this week said, a long time ago, I told everybody pain was coming. The pain is here. He said this week, the pain is now in front of us. Okay. And he knows these guys have the data charts. They know when America runs out of money. We're living on borrowed time. What's happening now, according to my friend, is everybody is getting interest loans against their houses. On the flip side of that, you're getting home equity lines of credit. Most of these people are immediately putting debt on their house, adding debt, okay? What happens when you get a home equity line of credit and what's happening in our world right now, this is happening. You ask a friend, they have high interest credit cards that are choking them to death. So over time, to make ends meet, they put $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 on a credit card that's now charging them 28% interest. Now what they do is they go, I gotta breathe. All I need to do is borrow home equity. Now they start diving into home equity. They start putting debt against their house. That debt can become volatile. And what happens when this is already happening, I've talked to so many cases in the last 60 days, multiple cases of people who said, I need to sell my house. I'm delinquent on my second or third mortgage or home equity line. And it's going to foreclosure. The housing market can't crash because everybody has equity and everybody's got low interest rates. What now? You just borrowed your equity and your interest rates, you have a blended rate now of what? Like if your HELOC is 12% and your first is 4%, what does it matter? Like what does it matter if you stop paying on the HELOC and the HELOC forecloses on you? So people don't understand that the subordinate debt, the secondary mortgages, can wipe the owner right off the house. They're not going to wait to take their claim and sell the house out from underneath you to get their money back. Because if they wait and then you default on the first, they get wiped out and have to write off all the money. So a second mortgage is not going to sit there and wait and say, oh, maybe if I wait long enough, they'll start defaulting on the first mortgage, the bigger debt that's at 3 or 4%, which everybody claims no one's going to default on. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. We have two possibilities here. We continue to inflate and make our housing bubble even bigger to get more transactions out of it. You know, when your interest rate's going 8% vertical, like it's shot straight through 7% to 8% in the last couple of months, end of summer. When that happens, that means your bond market has finally come out of the malaise and dreamland that the bond market's been living in. Bond market's tied to interest rates. Your 30-year fix is being raised because the bond market is now become a believer that the Fed's not going to cut those rates to 0% anytime soon. They're now having to come to Jesus moment like, hey, this is real. Like these yields are going to change. This Fed rate isn't going back down from 5.25% to 0 next month. It's not going to happen. Everything the Fed wants to see happen in order to back off the rates, y'all, where is that happening? Where are those metrics changing? Unemployment benefit claims. Have you seen them? They're right along the good old days of 2019. They're not like off the charts yet. If I'm the Fed, I'm like, why aren't my unemployment bennies going up? Why is there not more pain yet? What have we held this whole fragile system up with? We've held it up with whatever's left from stimulus. We've held it up from whatever we've gotten from the cerveza sickness, right? The money that came around the pandemic. But now we've got deficit spending. So our government's pushing dollars. There's no austerity. There's no cutting back. They just keep spending more. Their deficits are running bigger. Now they're running bigger deficits and they're paying more for interest because interest rates are higher at the Fed. As a community of people, we're now going to be paying higher interest payments for all this debt that our government's racking up and dispersing capital everywhere, including to foreign wars and all this kind of nonsense. The reality is, folks, look, the interest rate isn't coming down. Unless Jerome Powell is a complete liar and he's the only person who's followed through so far as a Fed chairman that I've seen in a long time. He's done what he said he's going to do, and here we are. Those of you that think, okay, there's not going to be a crash, there's not going to be a big, deep housing correction. Maybe not universally across the marketplace, but there's definitely going to be correction in certain areas where unaffordability is so untenable that people cannot approach the market anymore. They cannot. They will rent every day over owning. And now with the Fed rate getting worse, look how long it's taken, folks. The Fed started raising them rates a year ago. It's now here. It's now finally come to a full circle loop of where pain in some way is actually arrived into the marketplace. Like the raising of rates is a recessionary, it's a brake pedal push to slow things down. Look how long it's taken. It's taken a long time. They overestimated how quickly the Fed could rein in truckloads of capital and money that was pushed in through the pandemic era. So all that was pushed in. Everybody had money to buy everything. The everything bubble happens, and we've never popped one before. I mean, this is a big one, folks. So for all of you that don't recognize a bubble when you see one, Oh no, Jared, this isn't the bubble of '08. This isn't a bubble at all. Like, this is a square. This is a challenge or something. It's the same end result. It's going to be the same economic result because of the factors that created the hype in the first place. The pace of appreciation, untenable. It gets reversed. Newton's third law, it's back. All right, let me jump back off my soapbox and show you what I actually came here to show you. Top 3 marketplaces in trouble in the coming housing crisis. Now, let me share this with you. The thing that I want to enumerate for you is this. In marketplaces where there are high amounts of mortgages, there is a high risk of danger. So number 1, if you have low mortgage volume in a given county, then it does not constitute a problem or a potential high elevated risk. Okay, we want to talk about the 3 counties in Florida that are absolutely like national, probably discussed counties. Like, they will make it into the national conversation when we talk about how many foreclosures could possibly happen in these particular areas. So we need to talk about 2 factors. Number 1, we're going to talk about the fact that mortgages have to be above 65%. Okay, so it has to be a decent rate of mortgage activity. If there's not, then you're not going to have a high chance of mortgage collapse. But the second thing we're going to talk about is good old-fashioned low homeownership rates and poverty, okay? So the other 2 factors that happen, if you look back in the 2007, 2008, 9, 10 crash, that period was marked by areas where there was extra lending, right? So these were mortgages on other properties, not just my primary res, but I had 2 or 3 other homes as well. Those are high risk for foreclosure. Areas themselves with high mortgage rates where there's not a lot of cash ownership, those are obviously at risk for highly motivated sellers when the pressure's on. The last step, as I mentioned earlier, is poverty rates. You want areas that actually have a high blend of impoverished areas. It's unfortunate, but when you have an entire network of folks that just make less than the average, remember, when unemployment goes up, wages get depressed because employers can then shop for lowest dollar worker, and they often will. So people that have been making a certain wage, they're going to experience cuts, because what happens is if you want to keep your job, you have to accept a new package. If you don't, you get shipped out like 30% of the rest of the workforce. Now, all that to say this, the area I'm showing in front of you right now on the screen is the counties in Florida and actually in the South, because I had to take a screenshot and map a specific area to pull this data for you guys. But this is the lowest rate of ownership for given counties across the Florida region. Now look at this. Miami-Dade County is actually the number 1 on the list. Only 51% have home ownership. And I would imagine home ownership, because it's pulled from census data and address data, represents people who actually domicile their mailing address. So it's like, I own this property, and a lot of people own a property that's a rental and their mailing address is like another city or another state. But Miami takes the cake. They're number 1 for only 51% actually living and owning in that area. And this is the entire southern area, even including the borders around Florida. You're going to see Georgia here. I think you're going to see an Alabama county as well. But following them, you have Leon County, Alachua County, and then again, Lowndes, Georgia. You have Orange County, Florida, which is the Orlando marketplace. Duval County, Florida, which is the Jacksonville marketplace. Hillsborough, Florida, which is Tampa. And Osceola County, Florida, which is South Metropolitan Orlando location as well. There's a lot of Orlando locations actually that do hit this map. You will notice a lot of these counties are not rural. These are going to be urban or suburban areas across the counties here in Florida, because those are the areas you'd want to rent a house out. Nobody's going to rent a house in the middle of nowhere. So the next thing I want to show you that derive my result is I want to see the areas that have a very high percentage of mortgage properties. So we want to take a look at those particular counties that have low home ownership rates. And now I'm also going to rank them for poverty as well. Let's take a look. Now you'll notice right down here, notice how light Miami-Dade is. So Miami-Dade was number 1 on the list, but you're going to notice they only have a 57% rate of mortgage. So actually one of the lowest rates of mortgage properties in the given area. So most of you, if you're thinking about, oh, Miami might be dangerous, I'm kind of nervous, it just depends. Like, this could be taken to a granular level. If those of you are considering buying in Miami and you're concerned about being in one of these areas where it's dangerous because there's a lot of people that have mortgages around you, or the poverty is too high, or homeownership rates off, I can review those and you can actually hire me to do that and actually take a review of all these areas. But look at this. These particular areas right here, Jacksonville, Orange, Osceola, Seminole, these are the most red on the map. You know, Hillsborough is not far behind. So this entire Central Florida marketplace and Jacksonville really lights the map in regards to how much mortgage activity is there. Now, I want to make another statement here is that Polk County, many of you will notice I'm actually severely surprised. I would have to take a closer look because I would imagine Lakeland probably tips these numbers a little bit. I would guess that Lakeland has a higher number of mortgage properties, but a lot of this, folks, this low percentage almost rivals Miami, is actually the Disney border right here. And these are people that actually own vacation and Airbnb properties. Those properties, a lot of them are not at risk of foreclosure because they're all cash. That does not mean that someone that lives in a property or owns a property, rather, it's an Airbnb or second home, is concerned about the fact that the Airbnb market is starting to see collapsing news on its own, that rents are going down and the amount of second homes are being difficult to purchase. So the buyer demand in that marketplace is gone south. People there, you know, there's not a lot of mortgages. Doesn't mean a cash buyer may not come out there and throw the house out there to get rid of it. And, you know, being concerned that he's going to lose more capital value in his property because just things are cascading in that market. They will cascade, I think, even further. If I had to rank all of them, and I would say the top 3 markets considering all of these, number 3 on the list would be Orange County. So Orange County has 203,000 mortgaged homes. It is in the top 10 on the list for properties that also lack actual home ownership. So there's a high mix of rentals in this particular area. Number 2 on the list is Duval County. Now you'll notice Duval County actually has fewer mortgaged homes by a little than Seminole County here on the north side of Orlando. Seminole County has 66% of all of its properties mortgaged. Duval County actually has fewer. Seminole is also on the list for amount of properties that are lacking home ownership. It's like in the top 20. So it's not way up the list. You'll remember when I showed the rate of home ownership for the entire area, it was further down. The other thing I want to point out is that Seminole County has very low poverty. So Seminole County is not an area that is struggling. A lot of the ownership here is affluent. And even though there's high mortgages here, it's not going to crater before Duval County will. So Duval County makes number 2 on the list for Florida at risk. Number 1 on the list is obviously Osceola County. Osceola County has 71% of all of its properties under mortgage. Now, this is an interesting county because it has a blend of poverty, it has a high blend of rentals, and it has a high blend of FHA mortgages. Many of you, if you've been around the channel, you already know every time I look at a map of Orlando and I'm looking at the data, I'm checking out Osceola County and seeing where it's at, and I'm watching the year-over-year declines. Much of this particular southeast part of Osceola is already experiencing the largest year-over-year declines of housing price that we've seen of any other market in the Central Florida area. So for whatever the reasons, that area is just experiencing headwinds. And I will tell you, it's dropping even in the face of low inventory. It does not have historically high inventory throughout this area that's just causing a lot of these particular zip codes to experience price pressure. Buyers have left the building. That's what everybody doesn't understand, is that some of these areas, you don't need a high amount of inventory to sink the price. All you need is an absence of buyers. That is the thrust of the next market cycle, and no one, whether or not they listen, is up to them. But that's the update for this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, drop a comment below. Biggest way you can pay a thanks, smash the like button, and subscribe to the channel for a focus on real estate, primarily the Florida market, but the housing market. When there's breaking news to talk about, you're gonna find it right here. We'll talk to you real soon.